Hello everybody, welcome back to another weather video. Today I'll be talking about, is winter really dead, or is there really another chance of getting a winter storm throughout the rest of the month? Thankfully, I have some good news if you're a weather lover. At least for the eastern part of the country, there is definitely a storm chance around the 14th, 15th of January for a storm. Now, if you want to take a look at the GFS, for example, we'll slowly get to the 14th or 15th. I just want to point out a few other things as we go along. Throughout the day tomorrow and Friday, 1 p.m., there's a little low pressure system that's going to form off the coast of Cape Cod and go into the Gulf of Maine. In higher elevations of Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, we could get a quick 1 to 2 to 4 inch snow event as that storm stays weak and exits that part of the country. And then we have another weak low that forms. According to the GFS, this is one of the only models that have this really it being this bullish and giving parts of New Jersey, Long Island, and Eastern PA a quick inch or two. But if we want to quickly go switch to mesoscale models and switch back to 18Z here, you see it has nothing compared to the GFS having a nice little snow event for Southeast PA, New Jersey, and Long Island. Once again, this is the only model showing that, so I'm going to write this off completely for now unless the other models start to pick it up. As that passes on, we have another low pressure that forms off the coast, but that slides to our east. And then for our 14th, 15th time frame, like I said, this is our snow threat. The GFS might be not be showing the storm that you want, the solution that you want, but this is just one model run that is 200 hours out. Anything could change. From our winter storm that was on Christmas Eve, 200 hours out, it was over here. In the final product, it was in Ohio. So a lot can change. It could shift hundreds of miles east, west, north, or south. And if we want to continue playing out the GFS, it pretty much brings the storm up into upstate New York and forms a secondary low off the coast of Massachusetts and brings it into Maine. Now, if you want to take a look at the Canadian here and show it also shows, once again, it doesn't really have a system here for Friday and then shows the storm sliding off the coast for the 11th and then has our storm coming into the coast on the 15th. This is once again one model run. If we want to switch to the European here, which I think is handling this storm a little bit better, even though it's still very far out. Once again, storm slides off the coast for Friday afternoon, giving Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts in the higher elevations a quick 1 to 2, 2 to 4 inch snow event. Our second storm for Thursday, excuse me, into Sunday, Monday. The European is actually a little more bullish than the Canadian on this storm, and as that quickly pulls out to sea. And then as we look into our time frame, notice how on the European, I'll pull this up on Tropical Tidbits too. Let me get a wider view. Notice how the European here, if you look right here, this is what we call a 50-50 low. A 50-50 low is like a little block here that is going to drag down cold air into the east and form, once again, like a little block, causing any storm that goes off the coast to slowly move and go off the coast. It slowly moves because there's not enough room for this storm to go fast and smushes it down south. As I play out the European here, notice how it forms a storm off the south coast of Carolina, off the coast of South Carolina and slowly takes this thing northeast. Now, this is as far as it would go, but if I had to guess, the track would be something like this out to sea, but definitely giving Massachusetts, Long Island, New Jersey, and coastal eastern part of the US a good snow event if this were to happen. If we compare this to the GFS and why it's so different, notice your 50-50 low over here, and if we go to the GFS, it is not existent. It just has high pressure and ridging off the east coast. This is why, at least on the GFS, it brings it inland, it brings the storm inland into the eastern coast of the United States. And if we go back to the European here, notice the difference over here. I'm sorry, we got to go to the 12Z. Notice the difference over here. You have our storm, the GFS does not have this at all. So instead, it forms a ridge over Quebec, forcing the storm to stay south and go more off the coast. And if you want snow on the East Coast, this is what you want. You want the European to be correct and form a 50-50 low. Now, once again, this is 200 hours out. Anything could change. And if I just want to take one quick look at the Canadian. It also does not have a 50-50 low, and it's just straight up bridging across the East Coast. Once again, that's why it takes a storm on a more inland track. If we want to take a look at the ensembles, GFS ensembles, this is what it would show. If we quickly move throughout the time frame here, this is the 11th. There is some hints of a storm that could possibly form closer to the coast, but as of right now, that's not a major threat. If we quickly go to our storm threat for the 14th, you can notice there is some model agreement for a more offshore track. There's some down by South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida area, and there's more by the benchmark of 4070, which is right here. 4070 benchmark is usually when the coast usually gets its best snowstorms. And notice there is a handful to the east and southeast of it, and notice there's a handful to the north and northwest of the benchmark. Notice also there's a wide mean here, causing a lot of uncertainty, which is expected for it to be this far out, and then it takes the storm on the northeast trajectory. Now, if we take a look at the European model, European ensembles is very different compared to the GFS. Quickly, as we approach, or I gotta switch it back to 12Z. If we take it back to our storm here, it is a little bit more agreement on the storm forming offshore, but it's too far southeast and does not have enough northern connection to bring the coast any snowfall. And if we quickly just go to a 14 time frame, you can see there is definitely a lot more agreement on a storm forming than the GFS ensembles. There is a mean of the low pressure here because there's low pressures down in the Bahamas and there's low pressures in New Jersey, and the mean is somewhere off the coast. But don't don't focus on the mean part. Focus on the amount of members that actually do show a storm. There's definitely a high probability, if the European is correct with its ensembles, that there is a snowstorm across the eastern U.S. And notice how the snowfall changes. You don't have much on the way of snowfall from the European ensembles, and you go from very little to something across the eastern part of the U.S. You go from light gray to dark blues across anywhere from the mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina border all the way up into Maine, where you're in the darker purples and light pink. Now, I am not saying this is correct at all, it's just something to look at. Finally, the last thing I want to show is the CPC Center's Climate Prediction Center's 8 to 14 day outlook, potential as upcoming hazards across the country, and noticed how on the East Coast there's a slight risk of heavy precipitation, and the inland part of the country in this purple area that stretches from Albany and eastern part of Rochester, there's a slight risk of heavy snowfall. As of right now, they are favoring a more inland track if there is a storm at all. But of course, once again, this is too far out, and it is good signs that they are even placing these slight risks. They are acknowledging the storm threat, and they will continue to monitor it. Thank you everybody for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you